So yeah, very interesting to see. Do you think, Giuseppe, there are other categories that went up or down that are notable that we should touch on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the most notable one is definitely the TrueLetter.com, because it made this huge jump from basically no transaction recorded by Escrow.com in the Q4 2017. It went up to over 6 million. So that was a huge jump. The other category that we saw, it was the FreeLetter.com that basically went up 50% from 2.2 million to 3.6. Mm-hmm. And also the other ones you actually were mentioning, which is the 4letter.com. So that one was very interesting as well, because kind of seeing in the first 3 quarters, a kind of a stable growth. So for example, in Q3 2017, it was 3.5 million. And then in last quarter, Q4 was actually 4 million, and this quarter is 4.6 million. So it's very interesting. You see off and on there's end user transaction, but the amount is slowly growing. So it's a cool trend to notice.
That is a cool trend. Do you have any comments on what you think is driving that?
Sorry, the audio went off for a second.
Any comments on what you think is driving?
It's very hard to tell what is driving. And what I can say is that I've not seen personally, from my experience, big portfolio transaction. So maybe it's either a lot of small, one word domains that are actually being sold. And one thing that could actually reinforce that is that the disclosed transaction for those actually went down. So the volume went up, but disclosed transaction went down. So whenever you see that, that's probably an indicator that there's more, end user transactions or, one word as opposed to domains being auctioned or, other portfolio deals.
Yeah. So real quick, let's tangent into that just to give our viewers a little background. So, most end users, especially if it's a publicly traded company, they prefer a private transaction over a public one. But the data that you're getting, you pull all the public data, and Escrow.com partners with you to help with this report where they don't share things they're not allowed to share, but they share data on private transactions just in terms of some numbers, we had this much in 2L transactions, right?
Right. So basically, if Escrow.com, it does, it's they keep the confidentiality as, one of the priorities. So they never share any individual transaction with us. But what we do get is the aggregate volume, which is basically something that we can tell us how many transaction, not how many transaction, but the total volumes, total sales volume of a specific category.
That's tremendous. That quadruples the value of your report, because I don't believe that there is anywhere else that the average domain investor can access any of this information. If you went to a conference, meaning someone in the Sherpa network, right? One of our listeners, you could go to a conference, you could meet a broker like Giuseppe, you could, learn of something that he's allowed to privately disclose, but not something that he's under NDA for, and that's it. So, you could get this much more info, but because Escrow partners with you while maintaining this confidentiality, you're getting this picture that literally no one in the industry has, right? And then you share this with everyone.
Right, and it's important to do so because it allows investors to really know that there's a lot more life to the domain markets than they seem. You could obviously collect a lot of public data and see sales, but when you see, for example, $6 million in transactions in 2Ls, something you may not be aware of, that I think gives credence to domain names as an asset class altogether, because end users, companies are willing to spend that kind of money, as opposed to just looking at public data, which is still very important. And I encourage, of course, sales to be as public as possible to foster the industry as a whole, to help the industry. But it definitely, I think, gives some confidence and some credence to what everybody does.
I agree. Yeah. And just kudos to both of you. So this download is available for any of our Sherpa viewers, I believe directly through our website. And do you want to say where you have it available?
Sure. It's on, you can go on ggrg.com industry-report.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, this is a huge service to the industry, and you are building up the ecosystem for investors. So I thank you for doing this. Sure. Let's jump here and look at, so the thing that I found most surprising in your report was that you analyze the development of domain names. I think, most financial reports might not get into something like that. But the reason that we look at the development, I thought Mike Seiger said it really well in one of his prior interviews with you. Development anchors the value of a category. Like we had a show on Domain Sherpa a few weeks ago about vacation.rentals and how the buyer was building that site out. And that's why, I mean, we're not just doing it to be like, oh, this is interesting, which it is, right, but because it affects the entire GTLD class, the .rentals domain, to have something big that's marketed, that gets some mind share, consumers recognize and understand it. But more than that, the domain itself becomes more valuable in the process. So it looks like year over year or quarter over quarter, it goes 2L, then 3L, then 2 character, 2C. They have the highest development. That seems kind of like usual suspects, steady buyers, steady development trends. Giuseppe, what more do we need to know here?
I mean, actually I missed the last part because the audio went off for a second. Sorry, just like the last part, like usual suspect, and then that's.
Gotcha. No, that's okay. Let's see. I just said they seem like the usual suspects. It's, steady buyers, steady development trends. I'm just wondering, is there anything more we need to know here besides, development is steady, so value is growing steadily?
Yeah, I mean, I think the development index, it's probably like one of the most important indicators in the report. It's so important because it affects both like demand and supply. And I'll give you an example. Like it affects supply because basically if a domain is developed, it's much less likely that the company that is using it is going to put it for sale. And so that basically affects supply by limiting the amount of domains that are for sale in a specific category. And on the other hand, it also affects demand because while we cannot draw really a causality, a correlation between development and user demand, if a lot of domains are actually developed by companies, it means that those companies actually like those domains. So we kind of can